You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Wednesday. You know what that means. It means that we are back doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. I am your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire. And we have a special guest in store for you today. We're deviating from the plan that I had set up earlier in the week. We have Seth Galina from Pro Football Focus to help us talk about this matchup between Michigan and Georgia in the college football playoff semifinal, Capital One Orange Bowl, right down here in Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. Seth, so glad to have you on, man.
I'm excited to talk to you about this game. I'm more jealous of the fact that you are you're getting that nice Florida weather, and I'm up here in the Great White North.
You know, I met, actually, we went out last night and we met a bartender. She's from Quebec City, and she's been living in Fort Lauderdale for 7 years now. And she's like, "Yeah, I don't go back to Canada. My family comes down here. We don't do it the other way around."
Yeah, it's cold. I have to go like shovel snow off my car before I leave tonight. So I'm not happy about it.
Well, I'm sure my car is currently covered in snow up in Ann Arbor. So that's how that goes. So
that's right.
So obviously this is a huge matchup for both teams. Michigan, since we last talked, has beaten Ohio State, beaten Iowa. Let's start with Michigan and what it's been able to do. What's your take on what Wolverines have kind of become compared to maybe what they looked like at the beginning of the season?
Well, I think we just have to kind of convince ourselves, and I'm sure people who are listening to this podcast do not need convincing, but for the landscape in general, the national landscape, I think we just have to convince ourselves that Michigan is a really, really good football team, an elite football team this year. And it's always hard to do that when a team kind of comes out of nowhere. I mean, I understand this is the University of Michigan, this is a historic program, but we're not expected to do it this season. So when you come out of nowhere, you're like, oh, well, they have this problem, they have that problem, they have this problem, because we don't believe them like we believe a Georgia or an Alabama or even a Cincinnati, given the state of their program the past few years. But Michigan is a legit football team. They are as elite as they come. There's a reason they're in the playoff. There's a reason that they, to a certain degree, should be undefeated. Michigan State lost. They pretty much dominated that game. Then they dominated the Ohio State and the Iowa game and all those other games. So this is as good a football team, definitely, as Michigan's seen in a very long time, and one of the best teams in college football. And I think that, to me, and again, I know I'm not talking to the right people for this, because everyone who's going to be listening to this believes that Michigan is an elite football team, and they are. But I think from a national perspective, just like getting over the hump in our minds mentally, being like, hey, this Michigan team is really freaking good.
Now, I think there's a lot of misconceptions, right, in that sense. I was listening to a national person breaking down this game last week, right before I left to come down here, and they're saying, hey, the thing about both of these teams is the offenses are both very ground and pound, which, I mean, that part's accurate. But they said that they're not explosive. So how do you rectify the fact that, Michigan is explosive? They have more explosive plays, if you look at 50 yards or above, than any other team in the country. How do you rectify that, considering, I don't think we were talking about Michigan's offense as being this just super explosive group, but it certainly finished the season that way. What have you seen from that offensive side?
Yeah, and I think so much of I think this, again, comes down to what we believe Michigan is. And yes, they run the football, and yes, they try and pound you with some pulling plays and try and kick you out and knock you back and do all that stuff that we think about Michigan doing. But at the same time, the passing attack has been super efficient. I talked about this on this podcast a few months ago, how much I enjoyed watching Cade McNamara play. He can get the ball to the right player often, and they're creating plays down the field. It's one of those things where I really do believe the national media has not caught up to what this team is. And honestly, I haven't even caught up to them that much. That's why I'm trying to tell myself through this podcast that this is a real elite team that can. Like you cannot get to this point in the season playing in a playoff semifinal with a bad offense. Like it's
Mhm.
not possible. And Michigan is as good as anyone, that they've that I guess they've played against and that they might come up to in the playoff. I'm not saying it's not going to be an easy game against Georgia, but they can make plays down the field. I think they're a pretty good catch and run team, going to be tested against Georgia, but they can make explosive plays in any different way, whether it's through the air and then obviously we know through the ground when they have these two running backs who uh, make people miss in space every run almost. And so yeah, they have three ways, like any good team, they have three ways to get the ball down the field, and that's catch and runs. That's running the football and creating explosive plays, and then throwing the ball downfield, making pitch and catches down the field. I think they are best at the first two things. I think if they are able to get some one-on-one throws down the field and make some plays in contested target situations, I think that would bode really well for them. They probably need it. But yeah, this is an explosive offense that probably built around the offensive line. There's no doubt that helps them do a lot of those type of things, especially running for explosive plays. But yeah, this is a really good offense and it is super explosive.
Now, the thing that obviously has dominated the discourse when it comes to this game is the Michigan offense versus the Georgia defense, and there's this idea that given what Georgia's done all season, that they're impossible to move the ball against. Obviously, that took a bit of a hit against Alabama. What is it that Michigan is going to be facing, and how confident are you that Michigan is going to be able to find ways to be able to move the ball?
Well, like I said, I do think the first thing is you're going to have to create some plays on not just catch and runs, not just runs, but throws that are 20 plus yards in the air down the field. Have to find a way to do it. Alabama can run an offense that's a lot of different than Michigan, and it gives Georgia stress in different ways than Michigan's going to give Georgia stress. And honestly, not a lot of teams can do what Alabama can do, and they might honestly have the best quarterback in the country. So, like looking at it like that is difficult to be like, well, Alabama just scored a bunch of points on Georgia, so we're going to score a bunch of points on Georgia. That's tough. Michigan obviously built a little bit more like some other teams in the SEC. I'm thinking about Kentucky, for example. Obviously, I'm not saying they're not as good. They're like equal to Kentucky. They're better than Kentucky, but they're built more like that. And Kentucky still struggled, and that's a good offensive line there in Kentucky too. So it's going to be tough. I think that one of the issues I find when I'm looking at this game is that I think that Michigan wants to run their counter and their power play, where they're going to pull two players and kick out the front side, pull through, be physical. That is to a certain degree. Now, Georgia stops everything. That up until the Bama game, they kind of stopped any type of run scheme you want to put at them. But I always felt that this type of running scheme, unless you're Alabama, is like playing really into their hands because they attack that power and counter unlike any team in college football with an aggression that's scary to watch. So that concerns me a little bit. But I also think you can create some plays. If you're not moving the football that well in the run game, I think you can create some plays on play action. Get them up on the line of scrimmage and throw over top of them. Look, I gotta keep saying it. It's a tough matchup. Georgia, again, I don't think you can just look at the Alabama game and say, "Oh, well, we're just going to do what Alabama does." Alabama has a special group of receivers and, like I said, a special quarterback. But what Michigan can do is protect the passer, which is what Alabama was able to do against Georgia, something that Alabama had not been able to do leading up into the Georgia game. They were able to protect Bryce Young. I think Michigan could do the same with their group. And then once they blitz you, you can protect it. I think you can take some shots down the field if everything else is kind of not working. So there's two ways. Like you got to protect on your drop back game, and then you got to be able to play action if the running game isn't going there. I also think there's probably some ability to cut the ball back. Like if you want to show a play to the left, and let them over pursue and then cut the ball all the way back. I think there's a potential. Again, if Georgia has this was the historic defense until the Alabama game, playing against offenses that is some offenses that look like Michigan. So it's going to be tough. But like I said, those are my kind of things where I'd like to see them try and have success with if they're going to move the ball.
Let's do this one very, very fast, and then we'll move on to the other side of the ball and then the game in general. But how much do you feel maybe more confident in Michigan? Because one of the things that's given me more confidence in Michigan going to this game is that it's been able to do what it's done offensively pretty much all year, kind of no matter what defense it's facing, right? You look at Wisconsin, Iowa, Penn State, Ohio State, they seem to be able to do kind of what they want still.
Well, that's offensive line. To me, when you tell me that, it's offensive line. If you're winning in pass protection, you're winning in the run game, you can do whatever you want to those defenses. And, those defenses, some of the ones you named have really good defensive lines, especially on the interior. Iowa, I mean, Michigan killed Iowa, but Iowa's got a really good interior defensive line. With that said, it's not like Georgia's. Georgia's interior defensive line is from another planet. They got 3 guys who they can rotate in who are devastating players, all NFL players. So, and honestly, they all might be first round picks. So that scares me. But this is strength on strength. Michigan's offensive line versus Georgia's defensive line. It's strength on strength. Whoever wins that battle wins I don't know if wins the game, because we don't have to talk about the other side of the ball. But Michigan will need to control that line if they're going to have success.
And I think the other side of the ball, and we'll get to that momentarily, but that's the other side of the ball is it's interesting because it's not getting talked about nearly enough. Because I think people are more interested to see what the Georgia defense does against the Michigan offense. But before we move on, I got to tell you a little something about Built Bar. Built Bar is a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. It is something that I tend to go to all the time. I have bought dozens of boxes of my own volition. It is absolutely delicious. It's high protein, low calorie, low carb. It's everything you want in a protein bar. And like I said, it tastes like a candy bar. I've got a box of eggnog ones at home. I think I still have one peanut butter brownie one left. The coconut brownie chunk is my personal favorite. I absolutely adore it. And if you go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15, you can get 15% off your next order. That's built.com, promo code LOCKED15. All right, Seth, let's continue talking about this game here. Seth Galina from Pro Football Focus. I think that, and I was asked this earlier in the week, like, what does Michigan need to do to win? And to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the most important matchup for the Wolverines in this game is not anything offensively versus defense. Obviously that is very important. Getting the run game going is important because obviously that's how Michigan wants to win, finding ways to create mismatches otherwise. But to me, I think equally as important as Michigan's defense versus the Georgia offense, because I don't think that Georgia's seen many teams that defensively can do what Michigan can do. Obviously, Alabama is in that category. I think that the linebacking core is arguably what if Michigan's linebackers can do their job outside of the obvious of Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo. I think that because they're going to have to be covering Brock Bowers, they're going to have to help stop the run game. I think that that's probably the most important matchup, at least on that side of the ball. Would you agree? And what are the things that you're looking for when it comes to the Michigan defense versus the Georgia offense?
Yeah, I think like where you can get some similarities between Alabama and Michigan defensively playing against Georgia is like they both have edge rushers that can get out to the quarterback. And obviously, we saw what happened with the Anderson kid from Alabama, and we're going to see what happens with the 2 edge rushers that Michigan has that are game wreckers as well. That to me is probably where the game is won and lost, because I think Michigan should be able to stop the run a little bit. Now, Dax Hill, is he playing or not? No, the last I saw this morning, I'm not sure.
It's based off of what some other outlets are saying. It sounds like he will be, but it does not sound like he is in the area yet.
Right. Yeah, that's important. The tight ends are both really different players, but like both really, really good players. And Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington, you got to find ways to deal with them. That's going to be an interesting thing. I think that finding ways to disguise coverage against Stetson Bennett or JT Daniels, but I would imagine it's still going to be Stetson Bennett, is going to be absolutely important. Get him to hold the ball for a beat longer and get after the quarterback with those edge rushers. That is paramount to their success, I really feel. So yeah, I think like, and you know, keeping the linebackers clean in the run game, I think is going to be important. Like not having them do too much, keeping them inside the box with your rotations. I think that's super important. And Georgia's offense has been efficient. They remind me for the whole season. They've reminded me of this is a little way back, but 2011 LSU that had a great defense and an offense that was kind of underrated because they scored a bunch of points, but then they got against Alabama and probably in both games against Alabama that season. And Georgia can get got against a really good defense. Man, Michigan's got a really good defense. So obviously using that analogy, that bode well for Michigan. And I think there's a chance that, obviously, like if Pickens plays, that's another threat you got to deal with. I imagine he will play, but is he going to be effective? We've only seen him in just limited snaps near the end of the season, so that would be important. But I think that this is a team that Michigan could and maybe should stop on offense. But yeah, it's going to be. I mean, it sounds dumb, but the edge rushers are going to be super important here.
And that's also, I think, the interesting thing with the tight ends, because we haven't really seen many tight ends have success against Michigan. So I'm curious to see the reason why, obviously, being is a lot of those tight ends are being held in for protection. We saw teams start to try to use their tight ends, Wisconsin being one, of course, Jake Ferguson, and then they end up having to utilize him mostly in protection because of Aiden. So I'm curious just to see how much Georgia might have to change things up if Aiden starts to be effective, taking away potentially the guy that they want to go to in Brock Bowers. But what else? What are the other keys that you are looking at when you're looking at this game? I'm sure there's something that I'm missing. I feel like we've this game has been talked to death, but at the same time, like I'm not aside from Georgia's talent, and obviously a lot of the things we hit, it just seems kind of like there isn't much obvious on either side aside from the talent that Georgia presents that makes you say, oh yeah, now I have a beat on what game should be, which maybe it's the playoff as well, right? This isn't just week 6. But what are the other things that you're looking at when it comes to this game?
Well, I think, one of the issues that most teams face when they play against Georgia is that Georgia can stay with 2 high safeties because they can stop the run with light boxes with, the interior defensive linemen that I talked about with the linebackers who are pretty great as well. Now, they did that against Alabama. Difference is that in the passing game, Alabama can find ways that a lot of teams can't do to get their slots, get their receivers matched up one-on-one down the field against safeties, and you see that time and time again for big plays. I don't know if Michigan can do that. That concerns me a little bit, which means to a certain degree they're going to have to run the ball pretty hard, and they're going to have to get that second safety down in the box pre-snap or even post-snap to create one-on-ones down the field in the passing game. That I think is a pretty big deal because, like I said, no one's really been able to do that to Georgia. Alabama does it, but in the passing game where they're still able to create opportunities deep down the field against the 2 high safeties, which a lot of teams can't do. So that to me is like, don't really look at this Alabama thing. Look at how you get a team to play with only 1 safety, and that's by running the football.
All right, so last thing for you. How do you see this game playing out? We haven't really done much predictions yet as far as, just out there in the world. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I don't final score prediction. I don't know. I do know that the line is pretty favored in Georgia's camp, and I would definitely look at Michigan to cover that. I think the line is way too big for a game that probably won't have a lot of scoring. I think the line is way too big, so I would definitely look at Michigan covering the spread. In terms of, I mean, look, what do you want me to say? Like, I think Georgia's going to win, This is a really good football team. They're both really good football teams, but I think Georgia's a little better. But I would definitely think of it more as a close game than any type of blowout if people are saying that.
All right, that's Seth Galina from Pro Football Focus. Check out his stuff over at PFF. Very excited to have had you, Seth, and hopefully we'll get to talk about another Michigan football game beyond this. We'll see what happens come Friday.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. All right, that was Seth Galina from PFF. Before we move on, I'm just going to discuss a couple of things that he said here. Listen, betonline.ag has you covered for this holiday season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. As football continues its march through the college bowl season and the pro football playoffs, BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. So head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today. Use the promo code LOCKEDON, receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports, so don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so let us finish out. We are chugging along here on the Locked On Wolverines podcast. Hopefully I sound better, by the way. I went and bought a microphone here. And again, tomorrow, Thursday, we will have hopefully a panel. I believe Jake Butt, Mike Martin, maybe some other people here live in the Wynwood area of Miami, Florida. We will be doing a special in-person deal on Thursday. So look forward to that. But hopefully I sound a lot better than using my headphones like I did the last couple of days where it just did not sound good at all. Anyway, I think it's going to be an interesting matchup. I think the thing that Seth, obviously you're looking at, I agree with that, what he says. And obviously Georgia does have that talent and everything. I think the thing that benefits Michigan is momentum. And I don't think that Georgia necessarily has that. I think for all the people who say, well, they're going to come back angry, that's easier said than done, right? Like Michigan can come back angry after losing to Michigan State when it plays Indiana, because it's Indiana, right? Coming back angry against a team that is theoretically on even footing is a little bit of a different deal. Now, would it surprise me if Georgia won? It absolutely would not. Would it surprise me if Michigan won? It would not. This is one of those games where, even though like we projected to be close, I would not be surprised if it was a situation where any of the four potential outcomes could happen. Blowout by either team, close win by either team. Wouldn't surprise me at all, right? I just think that Michigan is not getting enough credence. And I think that the teams that Georgia's gone up against have not been of the same caliber as the ones that Michigan's gone up against. But that's obviously, sometimes players just make plays, right? Sometimes you sit there and you can look at, here's what things are on paper. Here's what's happened to this point. I think Michigan is obviously a confident team. When we talk to the offensive players all week, and even going, before going into the bowl game, we ask about Georgia, and they're like, "Listen, we're a good team too, right? We're a good offense. It's like, yeah, Georgia's a good defense, but we're a good offense. If Michigan can find a way to break open a couple big plays, if it can punch Georgia in the mouth early, and to me, that's the biggest thing. Michigan punches Georgia in the mouth early, it's going to go Michigan's way. Georgia it doesn't let that happen, or conversely punches Michigan in the mouth early, Georgia wins. I think it's whoever wins that first quarter wins this game. I don't think it's going to be a situation where there's going to be a fourth quarter comeback or anything like that. And I could be completely wrong. That's the nature of the beast. But I think that Michigan certainly is going to try to do like it did against Iowa. Score as fast and as hard as it possibly can in the early going, and force Georgia to kind of get out of its rhythm. It'll force the defense to try to maybe do a little bit more than what it wants to do. It causes a few more mistakes, and the offense suddenly will become one-dimensional. That's what Michigan's going to try to force Georgia to do. Whether or not it acquiesces is up to Georgia, a team that, as you know, if you are a regular listener, I've railed against for years as a team that absolutely loves to blow the big game. Michigan is a team that tended to do that, but it got the monkey off its back this year in spades, right? Georgia only has had that one game where it's like, uh-oh. They were trying to build Tennessee as that game. Sorry. Tennessee has been bad. It's still bad. Maybe it's better, but it's still bad, right? Whereas Michigan going to Wisconsin, that was the start of it, right? Well, you can throw Washington in there. I mean, I understand Washington didn't end up being good at all, but I mean, that still qualifies. I mean, but it starts with Wisconsin, and then the way that they found a way to win against Nebraska and Penn State game, and then obviously Ohio State, and then obviously as well Iowa. Being able to go out and do those things, right? Foregone conclusion that Michigan and Georgia were going to emerge from their championship games. Only one of them did it. So I think that if Georgia finds itself getting punched in the mouth early, it's going to create some self-doubt a little bit, because this is what Georgia does. It chokes. Now, if that happens in this game, we'll see. It remains to be seen. I do find it interesting that when I'm going through all this press conference stuff down here in Fort Lauderdale, Georgia's not being asked a lot about what it has to do against Michigan. It's just being asked about itself. Michigan's being asked about what it has to do against Georgia. I think there's certainly an edge that Michigan has played with all year because it's been doubted and counted out, and I think it will retain that edge. We'll see if it ends up paying dividends. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Again, Thursday, no mailbag. We are doing a live show from Wynwood, Florida. So anyway, we will talk to you on Thursday. Thank you for watching and or listening. Peace.